Welcome to Random Anime Review, or RAR XD for short. A show where we review random anime shows literally no one cares about. Or they do. I don't know what we're gonna review, hence it being random. I should first admit that I don't know or watch a whole lot of anime, as I do indeed have a life. Regardless, have no doubt that these reviews will be of utmost seriousness and professionalism. The randomness will be factored by the random anime selector feature on Kiss Anime, that site. And as this is the first one of its kind, this video will not be influenced whatsoever by previous animes I've seen, and I will strive to remain true to that for the rest of the series. Although bear in mind that it will get harder the more animes I review. And, of course, obligatory spoilers. Without further ado, let's push the button of misery.
Oh snap, Wizard 101? Man, it's been forever.
Yo, fire for life.
Okay, we got Black Butler 3 dub. Since this is what's after this is after a sequel, a trequel, threequel. This appears to be a third in a very popular series. I'm gonna do it again because I don't want to be fucked over. This series looks normal, sort of. Weasel and Dormouse. Slice of life anime, oh boy. Wait, fuck. I just pressed random by accident. Let's go look up that shit again. Oh, the episodes haven't aired yet. What the fuck? Let me just watch some anime. Okay, you know what? We're gonna go with Handshakers. Fuck pressing random. That sounds like some jerk-off anime, but it's fine. This is our anime. Nice, 12 episodes. This is perfect. So let's read the plot. This is an action anime. The anime takes place in Osaka in AD 20XX and revolves around the Handshakers, partners who can summon Nimrods, weapons born from their deep psyche by joining hands. In order to grant the pair's wish, the Handshakers compete with and fight other Handshaker pairs. The top pair will then meet and challenge God. Oh boy. They, the receivers of the revelation of Babel. They, the challengers to God. They who inevitably throw themselves into battle with their partners. What does God want from them? And did they want powers exceeding that of gods? The chosen ones, their souls linked, join hand in hand for the ziggurat where the fighting shall ensue. Looks like this is a religious anime. That could be interesting. Oh boy. Well, I'll meet you guys in however long it takes to watch all of these episodes.
The first episode starts off with us being introduced to our protagonists, Tasuna-kun and Koyori-chan, in a cliched middle of a battle, and so I bet you're wondering how I got here type of fashion, against another duo known as Break and Bind. They will literally be forgotten after the second episode until the very last, where they make a minor cameo. The episode then cuts back to another average day in generic high school boy Tasuna's life. He has some sort of relationship with big titty school president Riri, like they're almost dating, but not, because we got a character developed somewhere, you know. Tasuna's main trait is that he's a tinkerer, which will be used as a plot voucher in the future. He's applying for a new job as a lab assistant in a generic plot device lab, but he comes generic plot device late, so he has to open the generic plot device locked door to see a surprise. Tasuna's sister, Koyori, apparently died when she was a kid from some disease, aka the writers never developed this character and will continue not to do so, and on her deathbed she begged for Tasuna to never let go of her hand. Remembering this promise, Tasuna grabs her hand and God nuts in his ear. And now she's back from the dead and they have superpowers. They have become Handshakers. The whole premise of this anime is that they must defeat other Handshaker pairs until they get enough EXP to meet MacGuffin God. Anyways, when they get into the Pokemon battle, they enter the Nigurat, which is directly impacted by the power level of the fighters. All pairs have some sort of gimmick, something I'll get into later. The true plot device of this anime, however, is the fact that Koyori, for reasons not described until a long time later in an obvious plot twist, will die if she ever lets go of his hand. This leads to obvious hijinks as, how will they go to the bathroom, or take a shower if they're stuck holding hands? And that too is a plot device because they only keep this rule until it becomes inconvenient to the plot. For example, the fact that they hold hands is used to determine that they're handshakers by other people. That and they exhibit generic anime aura that tells antagonists that they're protagonists, which is what prompts Break and Bind to fight them. Break and Bind's gimmick is sexual abuse and BDSM, and their main weapon is a whip. Go figure. God's like, yo Tazuna, you have a Nimrod, use it. A Nimrod in this context doesn't mean an idiot, but actually refers to the weapon a handshaker uses. And how else would we have it if not to bar Koyori from having this ability to fabricate more plot in the future? This fight is where that plot voucher is cashed, as when Tazuna is on the brink of anime cliche defeat, he anime cliche gets up and develops his anime cliche powers, which are gears that form an oversized sword or technology or something. The episode ends with Tazuna accosting Break and Bind. This is a real world building episode, aka Exposition Central. We learn more about the ziggurat and its parallel behaviors to Earth. More rules are established for handshakers by Makihara-sensei, the lab scientist. He explains that for Koyori, the ziggurat in the regular world is the same, so if she dies there, she'll die IRL, unlike other handshakers who would just return to the normal world but lose their powers. Hypothetical questions I asked earlier do get answered in Zooey Mama. He said, fuck. It's pretty much par for the course for what I expected, but I still like to personally apologize to the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA for having to see that. Also, haha, le epic funny, they have to take shower and see each other's pee-pee, lol haha xd. It's moments like these that make you seriously question your existence. Makihara uses some magic, also known as the writers didn't care ability, and now Koyori lives under the assumption of an adopted transfer student from fucking Brazil of all places, to give a reason as to why she can't speak. In reality, she's mute. In essence, Koyori ruins all of Tasuna's social career. As a result of being seen holding hands so often, big titty almost girlfriend Lily ditches him as she thinks he's dating Koyori. In fact, the running gag for almost the whole show is that many people think they're dating, which must suck ass, since at this point in the story, they're siblings. Since Koyori is mute, Tazuna has to speak for her, which makes everyone think he's some sort of domineering boyfriend who won't let his girlfriend speak. People also pick up on the absurdity of them constantly holding hands, which only leads to more minus rep for Tazuna. Then, of course, the anime had to answer my rhetorical question. We get a bath scene. Keep in mind these are kids, you mongoloid. Let's sigh. This is where the crux of the anime really steps up. The next couple of episodes will be in a very formulaic format. Our protagonists will meet another pair of handshakers, will be introduced to the challengers' lives, they'll confront the pair. The next episode is them fighting, and of course the opponents lose. In the episode after that, the opponents assimilate into everyday life after losing, and the cycle repeats. Honestly, I wouldn't mind this type of formula if the anime wasn't just 12 episodes long. Because this cycle takes about 3 episodes per rotation, the anime's real specialty, slice of life episodes, are few and far between. And as most plot devices go, the whole must hold hand things is almost completely scrapped when the writers write themselves into a corner in this episode. That's right, they can now remain separate for up to 15 minutes, just because. Anyways, the first challenger pair for TK, which is how I'll be referring to our protagonist as the team from now on, is a businesswoman Cinderella Lolly and her employee. That's right boys, sound the alarms. We got a lolly on our hands. Essentially, the lolly is denied the proper respect someone of her status deserves in the business world due to her childlike appearance, often being confused for the assistant of her assistant. These two also run a restaurant for some reason, where we will see the rise of the motherfucking corn parfait. They invite our two protagonists out to have a date at the restaurant because, aww, they're such a kawaii desu couple. And of course, TK is too reticent to decline. Generic anime date no one cares about with corn parfait later. The lolly team figures out that TK are handshakers and a duel ensues. As someone who grew up playing a lot of Melee, let me explain this fight to you the best I can. Basically, TK and Marth dash dance to the right, baiting CD to think that they have center with advantage, only to Marth F smash with that extreme range. I mean, damn, look at that disjoint. Psych, Bibba, you got the wrong number. Turns out they never did F smash all along, and CD's basically Naruto and can clone themselves. Get nay-nayed, but I mean, come on man, we gotta have some suspense somehow, right? Doesn't really matter though, as in the end of course TK wins. After learning about Koyori's debilitating condition, CD opt to be TK's mentors, because we of course need the small antagonist becomes the student's mentor cliche. They give Tasuna an Xbox Live tag, Singuru gear, as Koyori has no Nimrod for no other reason other than we can have some sort of reveal later. I should mention that the name Single Gear is literally never used again, which means either the writers forgot about it, I'm gay, or they are just killing for time here. Chizuru and Hayate go off, demonstrating that perhaps Chizuru is more childlike than she'd like to admit, as part of the aforementioned cycle. One day, while walking in generic metropolitan city, Koyori decides to run off to play some Yu-Gi-Oh! Reality, it's so they can sell Handshaker merch in the form of a card game. Who I once thought was God, in reality he's just generic mini-boss, comes over and exposits to Tasuna that Koyori isn't his sister. Gasp! Not the sibling who isn't actually your sibling cliche. It can't be. Shift back to the A story, and it turns out that Yugi here is actually a handshaker with his hot older sister with big tits, Lily. Since the incest action with TK was deconfirmed by mini-boss mans, we have some new incest action between actual brother and sister, only now it's a lot more heavy-handed. Through this relationship, the writers parallel that Koyori is actually in love with Tasuna. I mean, come on, these are fucking 8 to 12-year-olds at most. Are they really all that focused on having intricate romantic relationships? The answer is no. And the stark reality is that all of the show's relationship dynamics are all pandering to one breed or another of degeneracy. I mean, the opportunity to have normal relationships is literally right there in front of them. They already have the brunt of the character development. Instead, what they could have done is have Tasuna and Lily bond and develop that romantic tension from the first episode, which they already had, and then had Koyori and Yugi bond in this episode via watching Big Bro/Sis in a relationship playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Together. Anyways, the fight commences. They begin to duke it out, Gears versus Pokemon cards. Gears obviously wins because Yugi here runs out of Pokemon cards to use. To summarize this battle, here's another analogy. Basically, Yugi had a team of all electric type Pokemon, and TK had a rock type Magikarp. Now, although Magikarp can't actually attack Yugi's team can't really affect TK with any of their electric attacks. Eventually, Magikarp runs out of PP first and can struggle its way to victory. After losing, the ancestral feeling of the sister to brother is reciprocated, because incest is wincest. This episode is yet another filler episode to show that TK mesh. After this anime, I can never look at that fucking disgusting word the same way again. To understand what I mean, watch the anime yourself. A school festival is taking place and TK is in charge of getting some cheap ass ingredients. We meet CD again, as they supply TK with some good ingredients. The whole episode centers around how the pair have good chemistry, as while Koyori can make food, Tasuna can go fix a burner or something. Also, they go back to the relationship building between Masaru and Lily, because we must adhere to the formula. This is the heal episode of the anime, where the protagonist gets injured and the secondary protagonist must nurse him or her back to health. We get introduced to a new pair, Kodama, a J-pop idol singer, and her manager, Chubby Sans with a General Grievous lightsaber. They are Omega OP, and through the power of sing, dance, and shitty canned animation, they are able to crush any enemy. They easily destroy TK, who barely escape in the nick of time, though not without Tasuna suffering major spine and rib damage after being yeeted on by a rock. As I understand, this is supposed to be the mega emotional episode as Koyori's big depresso that Tasuna's all hurt, but either I am devoid of emotion or the writers have shitty delivery because I felt nothing. Kodama and Sans have an interesting dynamic, as like how a manager amplifies a singer's success, Sans amplifies Kodama's attacks. It is insinuated that this is one of the last couples before God himself. Dear Lord, it's the fairy episode. Koyori pulls the Sailor Moon transformation you see in every anime, kid-friendly tits and all, and absolutely wrecks those libtards with her Nimrod. That's right, we finally made it to the plot twist arc of the anime. She now apparently has a Nimrod unlocked by the power of love. Great. Kodama attempts to use her shitty animation, but the power of incestual boners is strong with TK and they overcome Kodama and Sans. Oh yeah, and they could finally afford a voice actor and a plot twist yet again, she can speak now. We go back to the last part of the formula for Kodama and Co, and we see that Kodama was really a nobody all along, and her only fan is her manager. This episode is just another character development episode, and in essence only exists so that episode 11 can take place. Makihara congratulates TK on getting so strong and making so much progress, and it's about to exposit something important, but the generic TV trope had to activate itself, and Tasuna picks up a call and completely ignores what Makihara is saying. He gets a part-time, eventually full-time job at Chizuru's restaurant. The important question is brought up: will TK split up when it's all over? Whether they win or lose, eventually they'll be able to separate. So the question is whether they'll actively choose to remain together. Obviously Koyori says yes. This whole idea could have been expanded into a fucking final episode, but just casually skimmed over for 5 minutes. During their lunch break, they go and meet Yugi and his sister, and they say they're friends or whatever, so that they can all go to the mall for episode 11. There, they meet the mysterious man and his lolly girl, which is apparently the real Koyori or something, aka twin sister cliche. This episode is the final in my eyes, as episode 12 was literal garbage. This is the true backstory episode for all the characters. The mysterious man and Makihara were once handshakers, and were part of a researching team, researching the cause and properties of handshakers. Makihara is the positive, expressive type, and the mysterious man is the serious, calculated type, and they don't mesh very well. The lead researcher and his wife are handshakers, and everyone is OP, wrecking many noobs. One day, the wife falls sick and gives birth to 2 twin sisters, Koyori and Mayumi. Apparently, since they were born in the ziggurat, they can't exist outside of it without holding hands. They get constantly attacked by other pairs because they're little children, making them a liability for Makihara and the other Pibba. The father goes insane with power and vows to avenge his once thought blessing turned to cursed children. He kills people some more, and the couple finally is sent to heaven, only to never return. At their funeral, suddenly Mayumi and Koyori faint like epileptics, and are only saved by an organ donor. They are permanently in a coma, which causes the faults in Makihara and Pibba's relationships to magnify. They part ways due to Pibba believing that they should go challenge and kill God now, whereas Makihara believes that they should take their time investigating where the couples went. This causes Pibba to go and take Mayumi with him, while Makihara is stuck with comatose Koyori. After finishing their monologue flashback, they fight, and boy is it underwhelming. The guy's stand is that he moves fast or something, and Mayumi's ability is kimono dodgeball. Her main flaw is that her Nimrod is one dodgeball, so she keeps on summoning instances of her dodgeball and blowing them up, when in reality she should be fucking bouncing the damn balls more. Big gay. Let's talk about some weird shit here. This adult man's injects this in 4-year-old with love aids to force her to like him, but it's okay because she likes him back anyways? Naniga? Seems pretty fucking pedophilic to me. This fight sucks, they do a 9/11, and it's all over. The rest of the episode is just filler. Let me remind you, this is the last episode. Where is the acclaimed fight with the god that's been hyped to death? Where is the climactic moment we all wanted? There is none. The show literally ends with God going, ha 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 ha, get rickrolled noob, you're never fighting me. That's it. That's really fucking it. There's no more. Go home. My first episode thoughts were right, like the humans in the story of Babylon. They lost, because in the end, God is absolute and can just end them whenever. The end. No one dies. There is no sacrifice, no loss, no change, nothing learned. In general, the biggest problem with the plot is that it had so much potential but failed miserably. The concept of handshakers is genuinely interesting and could have made for a great anime, but the execution of this idea was awful. This is one of those animes that should feel like you've gone on a long adventure to get to the top of the mountain, fighting countless pairs to reach God, but it doesn't. Instead of feeling like scaling Mount Silver and fighting Red, it feels like fighting 3 trainers on the bridge by Cerulean. It honestly feels like nothing happened in this episode at all, and that's really in part to the fact that none of the characters really grew from this experience. Aside from looking slightly older, more on this in the art section of this video, Tasuna and Koyori are exactly the same as they were in episode 3-ish, predictably in love. Another issue with this anime is the overall message behind it. If you couldn't tell, the whole message was probably about being more accepting of the various relationships that are generally considered taboo. The first centers around sexual domination and abuse, second around height disparities, the third around incest, and the fourth on consensual pedophilia. Aside from the second, which really isn't even an issue, there's a reason that the other relationships are not accepted in society. In the case of the fourth and the first, laws are put in place so that one lover cannot overpower and manipulate the other, because that's seen as immoral and abusive. In the case of the third, it is biologically unhealthy to inbreed, as the DNA of siblings tends to be similar, which magnifies certain unwanted regressive traits that they might both have. The anime really did need a bigger message, not to mention a completely fucked up one, as this could have been a really cool idea on its own if all the pairs had more advanced powers and were more fleshed out than Dodgeball and Magic the Gathering. I mean, those are acceptable, but if there can only be 5 pairs, I'd rather they picked some cooler abilities or worked harder on the existing ones to make them more creative. The term fight is so broad, there are so many ways to fight, yet only one boring method of fighting is shown through all the fights that consistently works, which is simply charging at the opponent. This anime is truly held back by a lack of imagination and creative direction. Possibly the most glaring issue lies within this anime's art style and visual presentation. To best describe it, I have yet another analogy. Imagine your favorite food, let's say pizza for example. Now imagine your favorite drink, let's say Sprite for this example. Now imagine someone dropped the pizza in a glass of Sprite and threw it in your face, and then expected you to like it. That's what this anime is. It's like there was zero coordination between the CGI team and the 2D art team. Take a movie like Treasure Planet, underrated classic, which is able to both deftly weave CG 3D animation and 2D drawn animation into a realistic enough blend which allows for the show to remain immersive and consistent. Now take this scene from Handshakers. TK looks like Paper Mario here because the lighting on the 2D layer doesn't match that of the 3D layer, and neither does the shading. This is especially obvious in the Ziggurat fights, where the creative team likes to do this 360 pan shot of the characters in a CGI environment, and it just looks god-awful. Now don't get me wrong, on their own, they look pretty decent. I mean, look at the character design for even the mother and father, who have just such tiny roles in this anime. I was genuinely taken aback at how good they look, especially considering that they have at max 45 seconds of screen time. Everyone in this show looked amazing. Well, except for a few. Kodama has to be one of the few lowlights of this anime. It's just so strange that despite being a Japanese idol, she looks the worst out of everyone. Seriously, half the time she looks like someone green screened her in there from a 240p video. This is mostly due to the fact that since she was probably developed as a character last minute, they didn't put much effort into making her mesh into the scene. This is most apparent in one of the laziest aspects of this anime, the aforementioned canned animation. Like, if you were just binging this anime and not really paying attention, you would probably not notice or care for some of the animation shortcuts they took, i.e. pasting the same characters in the background for various shots, which is excusable since budget. But there is absolutely no way you would not notice this dance animation, her main attack. It is by far the worst meshing in this anime, as the perspectives aren't even aligned or proportioned. Now that aside, some of the fights in this anime are really well animated. The Chizuru fight for me, at least, was like an artistic peak for this anime. The clashes look really nice, and the particle effects are pleasant but not overbearing. One of the biggest downfalls of anime in general are the openings. Think back to yourself. How many times have you simply skipped an anime opening? You watch it on the first episode out of curiosity, and then never again? I believe that this is in part due to the fact that Japanese openings tend to be way too long for whatever reason, and feel that they need to summarize the whole anime, kind of like this video. In Western shows, openings are sweet and to the point. They simply tell you, hey, regular show's over, now you gotta change the channel because you're not old enough to watch King of the Hill. I still remember classic openings of shows I haven't watched in years like Tom and Jerry or Power Rangers. Yet, I still couldn't tell you for a damn second a single anime opening. In this mindset, this anime's intro is actually decent, but that's mostly due to them showing the epic battles and the accompanying music, which brings me to my next point. Not often do I think about the musical soundtrack of an anime, hence why it doesn't have its own section, but boy oh boy is this anime's soundtrack good, or at least the 3 or so songs I remember. One of the best songs is the opening song, but maybe that's because it gives me some serious Sonic Adventure 2 vibes. Obviously, I can't show the music without being yeeted for copyright, so you'll just have to take my word for it. The other 2 good songs are the Challenger Approaches music and the Battle music, which also really stuck out. Actually, a quick button here, I listened to the soundtrack and remembered a couple more tracks I forgot. They were actually good, with the exception of the emotional tracks, which I don't really like in general, but I could imagine some people enjoying. This OST is actually fire. The songs I was referring to before are known as Mercury Calling and The Shadow. Now, as a final note for animation, I just wanted to point out something that I found interesting. Is it just me, or as the anime continues, the characters look older and older? I don't know if that was intentional or not, because at the beginning of the anime, they look like Hermione in the Sorcerer's Stone, and at the end, they look like Hermione in Deathly Hallows Part 2. However, in Harry Potter, years have passed between the first and the last movie, whereas in Handshakers, each episode takes place right after the other, so at most a couple weeks have passed. Maybe they realized that they were in essence making a Shota and Lolly fall in love with each other and decided to up the age slightly as the anime continued. Despite having a lot of filler, the filler in this anime is actually better than the action, I would argue. These are the only Family Guy funny moments number 67, if you know what I'm saying. If there's one thing this anime excels at, it's side character interaction and dynamics, but then again, that's kind of the whole focus of this anime, so it'd be pretty hapless to mess this up. At least that's what I thought at first. When you reflect on it, you can kind of see that certain dynamics such as the one between Tazuna and Koyori aren't properly fleshed out and others are straight up awkward to look at, like the dynamic between the Pibba and Mayumi. How did Tazuna even go from being weirded out and annoyed by this random lolly that's handcuffed to him to being enamored with her? Was it the fucking bath scene? Must have been the bath scene. Some characters do play off each other really well though. For example, CD. Although the assistant guy is rather one-dimensional, he acts kind of like a support to Chizuru. She gets this extra layer of depth to her from her height and age insecurities and responsibilities as a result of always being compared to the assistant guy. It's kind of like taking a shit next to a piece of bread and being forced to pick which one to eat for lunch. Sure, if the bread was all on its own, it would be rather unappealing, but as a result of being compared to the shit, it automatically gains more appeal and interest. There is one thing I have to give this anime credit for though, and it's having a wide variety of main characters and somehow managing to balance the limelight between all of them. Obviously, TK will have the most screen time, but the side characters do get a considerable amount of development, and it's quite laudable that the creators of this anime didn't take the easy way out and just have the characters be forgotten after they lose the fight to TK. Although the dynamics might be inherently contrived as a result of trying to push some political agenda, the characters are somewhat likable and feel natural enough, if you ignore a lot of issues. All in all, I honestly think this anime is pretty underrated, but not underrated in that people think it's okay and it's actually exceptional, but more in the sense that this anime needlessly gets shat on by most people, mostly due to bandwagoning, when in reality if you're not paying that much attention it's not that bad. The story is generic and is more suited for a longer series, but it has its moments, and thus it gets a 2 out of 5. The art style is really fresh and vibrant. The OST is a real banger, but the anime has some camera and immersion issues, so art style gets a 3.75 out of 5. And finally, the character dynamics are kind of what this anime centers around, so I'll give it a 4.143 out of 5. So all in all, Handshakers gets a 10.163 out of 15. If you enjoyed this series, just leave a thumbs up or something. Subscribe. I need subscribers. And I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye.